you're very special, and you are part of the history, not only of the places where you live and the contribution you have made at this point, but you're part of a history of life itself, because life will go on even when we leave. Life will go on, and the contribution that we have made will determine the quality of life. So before we end this, session, I want to reflect a bit on what the significance of what we're doing, and the role that we have played to make this world a better place. So that's my only comment for the time being.
Okay. Well, we prepared for you an action plan here because we want people to help people to present. Some of you have been involved in community uprisings, riots, disturbances, etc. So feel free to join in with the presenters. Write your questions down. Ask what you want to add to it. And those of you who have not, make sure you write your questions down, because we're going to save some time for questions and answer. And we wanted to show how these 6 steps, I think that it came from, I forgot who asked, Joan asked about, would this work in student protest, current contemporary issues? And so we're going to bring that up and let you know that there's no one thing to do. Every situation is different, and it takes strategic planning and understanding of where you're going, especially if it's already full bloom by the time you get in there. You didn't start it, and people are asking you to intervene. How do you intervene? Who intervenes? When do you intervene? All that has to be strategically planned, and every community is different. But these are some concepts you understand, some real case studies that these people were involved in, and Dr. Lafayette and I, and they're going to share with you they're going to take about 20 minutes, and then we'll write your questions down, and then we'll shift to the second one. Chuck will be first, and then Bryan will be the college protesting in Irving. I think I sent that to you. But these are examples of how you can use this in community and people have a community conflicts and issues, current issues, and it's full blown. In fact, it's into riots. Okay, Chuck, you are going to do the Mike Ferguson. I think I put the date on there wrong. The date was 2014, not 2024, 2014. It's 10 years ago in August that Mike Brown was killed, and a lot of moving parts in these and that. And Chuck's going to cover a little bit of it for you, just to give you a concept of how it can be applicable. Okay, Chuck, I'll let you know when you got 15 minutes, Chuck. I'll hold my hand up. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Had to unmute. First of all, I'm going to post in the chat the link for the consent agreement that was with Eric Holder and the Department of Justice in Ferguson. So if anybody wanted to take a look at that at a later time, they can. I don't know if it's post, but I don't think that's actually the...
Okay, I have a problem, Chuck. I can only see the top of the heads of everybody can't be seen. Is it my computer, or is it the...
That I'm not sure.
No, I have the same problem.
Has a line say this meeting is recorded, but I can not see the top of everybody's head.
Yeah, me too.
I didn't want to touch anything because I don't...
Did you agree that next to this meeting is being recorded, there was an OK button? Did you push that?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Need to know that. I don't push any buttons without getting permission from the folks who know what they're doing.
Now I'm going to share my
Got it.
screen here.
Thank you.
Did that help?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Yeah. If you
That's
don't push it,
perfect.
they think you don't
Yes.
agree to be seen.
I see. Okay.
Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay. Like I said, I was part of the Mike Brown Ferguson Uprising when it happened in August the 9th, 2014, for Ferguson, Missouri. And what I'm going to share is the process that I used in this uprising. Some people may have done differently, but this was actually what process that I used. So any uprising in the 2014, it happened on the screen. I saw it. At that point in time, I made a decision that I wanted to go down and see, how I could um, help out in this situation. And I didn't know which way I was going to go, but the city was on fire. It was a lot of businesses on fire. As you can see in this picture here, this is a local quick trip station when it first started that got burnt down, looted, set on fire, along again with a lot of other businesses. People were in the streets protesting everywhere. It was all a disarray and people were very angry. Um, So when I went there, I didn't have anything in mind. And when we go into a conflict as nonviolent practitioners, we go as we don't have a solution to the conflict. So I wanted to make sure that my mind was clear. I didn't have a solution to this. I'm not from Ferguson, Missouri, but I'm from St. Louis, and I worked in the city. Worked in Ferguson County. I've also have done nonviolence workshops in the city. So uh, I had a lot of experience and built relationships in the city. Uh, and then also your goal there is to help them find the way to their goal using the Kingian nonviolence process that we have. And we have to make sure that we keep in mind the 6 principles of Kingian nonviolence when we're doing this. And so the first thing I had to do was um, I needed to find out who are the key players in this. I don't know why my computer's not moving now. Who were the key players in this? Finding out the key leaders and leading organizations. Um, I needed to find out who were the people, like the NAACP, the Urban League, Department of Justice, the Mound City Bar Association, and 100 Black Men were some of the leading organizations. There were lots of organizations, and you have to decipher through all that. How did I do it? I was on the ground talking to people as they're out protesting and marching and walking, listening to who's leading the groups and the organizations and the talks. So those were things that I had to do on ground while this is all happening. And I'm telling you, it was chaos because at points, at sometimes you got tear gas being thrown out. So you watching out for everything. You've got provocateurs in the audience as well that were out there starting up things and starting up disagreements when it first started. You have people that protest during the daytime, and then you have a whole different group at nighttime. So I committed to go down there in the daytime and in the nighttime because there are two so totally separate, different entities that are out there participating. And then once I found some of the key leaders, because I didn't find them all, no, but I found the ones that I thought would be good for us. Like Reverend Starsky. Most of them were ministers that were out in the front leading. Reverend Corey Bush, who's now was in Congresswoman Christy Griffin and Pastor Rob White. So I had to make sure that the people that I was choosing basically was a holistic approach. You had some ministers that were dealing with the gang leaders, some were dealing with corporate leaders, some dealing with just people that are out there. So I had to make sure that I choose wisely and that we make sure that it's a holistic approach to the nonviolence process. The picture you see here was one of the churches. This is Church to Christ the King with Reverend Tracy Blackman. And then here we go with the lead organizations, like I said, were the NAACP, Urban League, Department of Justice, Mound City Bar Association, which was a legal team. And then on the right, you see some of the leading people. This picture here is where Mike Brown and Canfield Apartments, where they had his body on the ground for that period of time. In Canfield and Ferguson, it was a kind of like a apartment complex, low income apartment complex. So the first part that I went through was information gathering. And I had to get all the information of who were my key players, who were my locations, what were the facts in that Mike Brown case that he was walking in the street and a police officer wanted him to get off the street in the middle of the street and get on the sidewalk. Ultimately ended in a tussle and a police officer shot him. They say that Mike Brown reached for his gun, but you know, that's still was in things to be found out. And then I had to move on to education. So the education piece was, once I found the meeting spots, the churches, the schools, and colleges in the area, it was all about building relationships at that point in time, building relationships with the pastors, talking to the key leaders about nonviolence workshops and orientations in that area to offer to the people, because it was so chaotic. You know, they did have some nonviolence training going on, but it wasn't a Kingian nonviolence. So we offer those to those leaders in those different churches in those areas, and also the school, Riverview Gardens High School, also community colleges. It was Fontbonne Community College and Flow Valley, what we call Flow Valley. And again, I said, who should be invited? We talked about those 6 leadership organizations that should be invited. You know, you've got the different organizations, you've got gangs, you've got local businesses, you've got your schools in the area, high schools, your colleges, you got volunteer organizations, and then we have law enforcement. Those are our 6 core stakeholders that we invite to any type of workshop that we have. And next is our personal commitment. How personally committed are you to seeing this out, seeing the conflict to the end? Well, you know, some people went to jail. You know, our personal commitment here was the different churches that they went into. They had songs and praise and worship that they did at the churches to keep them going and keep the forefront, keep the issue in the forefront for them. So they were personally committed, as well as myself. I had to be personally committed to come down there just about every day to make sure that we pick up on key factors, you know, the leaders, the stakeholders in the game. And then how do we get this organized? Because there were so many splinter groups out there and so many provocateurs out there. We had to be strategic in how do we attack this, and how my goal was trying to bring them all together. You know, the ones that were like the NAACP and the Urban League and these different locations and the colleges and that at the same time. So how do we do that and still keep going and pushing and adhering to the principles as well? Then we went to negotiations. Negotiations, again, everybody knows that it's not to win over your opponent, but to win them over to your side. It's a win-win for both parties. You know, in the negotiations, you know, we can't compromise our principles. We can compromise timelines and issues, but never our principles. So in the negotiations, Eric Holder was brought in from the Department of Justice and came up with a consent agreement after looking over everything that St. Louis County was doing. And some of the negotiations, the mayor of Ferguson resigned, the police chief resigned, the decree was sorry, lost my place here. The decree was basically saying that in St. Louis, the police were writing tickets that were excessive. They were stopping and searching. They were doing everything incorrectly. They were not everything, I shouldn't say everything, but they were doing a lot of things incorrect. And the Department of Justice and Eric Holder came in with the consent agreement for them to make some changes. And in the changes, that was some of the things. In St. Louis is very different. It has 88 different municipalities, and 10 of them are private sectors as well. So, in the St. Louis County, the mayor and prosecuting attorney run all of those 88 precincts, and it's different from any place else in the U.S., I believe. So again, you have 88 different precincts, and they're writing tickets and they're setting up speed traps for people that don't have the ability to take care of that. So once you continue to cripple them, now they're in the system and they can't get out of the system. So it was an unfair system for some folks in certain areas, while in other areas it was different. So they had to stop overwhelming traffic speeding tickets, speeding traps. The mayor resigned and the police chief resigned also. And then from here, we moved out to direct action from negotiations. And direct actions, as you all know, is only done to get back to the negotiation table. And again, we must adhere to the principles of nonviolence when we do engage in direct actions. As you can see up top here, some of our signs that we created were "Love is our weapon" and "We want justice," but nothing derogatory. I actually had to do a class on how do we do a direct protest without calling the police officer out and making these different names. One, I had to talk about to them, we needed to get marshals in this to basically talk out to the police officer and point out any provocateurs that are throwing rocks or throwing mocktail collie bottles and things of that nature out to them and turn them in. We had a conversation with the police to let them know that this is a nonviolence march, a nonviolence protest. And we let them know that we had marshals and we found the leaders that they were. And then in the negotiations part here on the left, the picture on the left was when we went to the State Department. We had to go to the Capitol. Again, it was just basically a nonviolence movement, and it was very strategic. And then after direct actions, then we move on to reconciliation. Reconciliation is when two parties once were in a conflict, now they're working together to solve bigger problems together in that community. In this conflict, we had a consent agreement with Ferguson City and the DOJ that will help Ferguson improve the ability to effectively prevent crime, enhance both officer and public safety. It will also increase public confidence in the Ferguson police. In the Ferguson Police Department. It was also designed to increase transparency and strengthen accountability measures within the police department. So as you can see here, the picture that I have over here is the gentleman with the bald head to the left. He's the FBI agent. The next gentleman with the black, his name's Charles Mayo. He was with Hood Helpers. He was a gang leader. And then these other two are partners with him in that. So it was a reconciliation of we were now doing workshops with the community, with the FBI, some gang leaders, myself as a nonviolence trainer, and training the community in how do we do nonviolence, Kingian nonviolence, without letting it escalate to violence. So the reconciliation, and they committed to continue doing nonviolence workshops.
He's done a good job.
And with that, I end up, and if you guys have any questions, my name and number and my email is up here.
Chuck,
Yes.
could you talk about when Bernice King and how she brought him down to those training at the school, and he went down to Atlanta you brought those kids down for the
Right.
board program very quickly. You got about 2 minutes.
Like when we talk about schools and colleges, well, the high school was involved where Mike Brown had attended, which was Riverview Gardens High School. And we went there and did a training with the kids there. Miss King, Bernice King.
Tell them who went. Who was it? Who was the trainers?
Who I went was Bernice King, Fly, Gerald, oh no, not Gerald, Bryan Murray, um,
Willie Bolden, Reverend Willie
yeah,
Bolden.
Reverend Willie Bolden, Charles Rochelle from LA.
Crip member from California.
Right. And we brought the King Center in, and again, I didn't mention that when we bring in the King Center, when I brought in the King Center, it was not any type of media hype. It was all low key. Nobody knew what was going on. It was more not about us. It was again giving them the process so that they continue this and keep it going. Ultimately, we trained the schools, that high school. We ended up taking them to Atlanta for Dr. King's celebration. Miss King wanted to bring them there. They went to the Greatness Dinner. And that was one of the highlights for those kids. And I've seen a couple of the kids since then. They've gotten jobs and they're working and they're doing great. So it was definitely a holistic approach. Again, keeping in mind that all the six core leaders in the six projects of six stakeholders that are in on this were all a part of it, which made it. I got an opportunity to see everything in action.
Sure. Okay, and thank you very much, Chuck. And also SCLC came in with Dr. Lafayette and Reverend Steele, et cetera. So it was a holistic, comprehensive approach to that, like a beehive. Thank you very much, Chuck.
Hold on. And one thing I wanted to add into that is the outcome of that in Ferguson. Things are still working. Out of that, there's a Boys and Girls Club that has been built over where that Quick Trip was burnt down. There's also Urban League that's now in that area. So they have a lot of great things going on for the community that since the uprising of Mike Brown that's come in, and they brought in different businesses and stakeholders in that or in Ferguson now. And again, now we have a black mayor in there, and then also a prosecuting attorney that had been a prosecuting attorney there for 27 years, has now been out, and there's a black prosecuting attorney there as well. And as well as Cori Bush going into office for congressman. I don't think she didn't win this time. And then Reverend Tracy Blackman as well has been invited to the presidential office when Barack Obama and Michelle Obama were there.
Okay, thank you very much. That's and if you have any questions, write them down. Chuck's gonna answer those. That's real quick conceptual of what happened, but the details you can ask him when we get the question and answer. The next one we're going to have is Bryan Murray. Bryan Murray is in California. And
hang on, Bryan. Let me change you over to the host now.
Well, you can just allow multiple shares.
Yeah, I don't know how to do that one, but I can just change you to the host real quick.
All right.
I'll let you know when you have 5 minutes, Bryan.
Okay.
Hang on, Bryan. I'm trying to get to you.
Take time.
Bryan came from Georgia State, and they moved out there in California a couple of years ago. He studied for his doctoral, and he's from Tennessee, right?
Yeah,
Bryan?
I'm from Nashville. Yeah.
You got it now, Bryan.
All right, I got it. Let me go ahead and share this. Actually, I don't want to share that screen. I want to share a different screen. All right, so long story short is that I came out here during the pandemic, right? Everything was shut down in Atlanta. I said that I'm going to go ahead and go where the sun shines at. My small kid was starting school, kindergarten, and I needed some schools that was open, and Atlanta wasn't open. Well, soon after I got out here, of course, a lot of the stuff that was happening with
Wait a minute.
can you hear me?
Yes.
A lot of stuff started happening with the protests, right? As far as like the bombing of Gaza, things like that. And so here it is, I found myself in the middle of this thing as a nonviolent practitioner. I really didn't know how much to get involved, right? But thankfully, I came into this with already kind of a sense of who I am in these situations, because this is the things that's going to really test you. And most people really, adhere to the principles and the steps of nonviolence, but they forget what the goal is. The goal is the beloved community, right? And so now I'm involved in this conflict where people want people to pick sides, okay? And so I'm going to really talk about like commitments. I don't want to rehash the 6 steps again, because Chuck did a great job doing that. And actually, I forgot about some of that stuff, Chuck, to be honest with you. I'm glad you brought it back up. But let me see. So I'm in the College of Education. Okay, there's a deep history in education about protests, other things like that. One of those things, as far as like education goes, especially in the Black liberation movement, is that schools do not stop. I don't care who's protesting. I don't care what's going on. If you're a teacher, you let the students go out and protest. But as a teacher, because of Brown versus Board of Education, all the other things that we had to fight for, the Black teachers, we do not leave the classrooms, right? I don't care what's going on. If there's snow outside, if they call us to go to be in the classroom, you be there. In the pandemic, if they call you, you go. That's the tradition that I come from, right? And so I'm entering this whole thing where there's a lot of different conflicts going on, and everyone wants you to pick a side of what to do, how to protest, all this other stuff. And so as a practitioner, this is the reason why we really need trainers. People are going to come in and really test you and see what you're about, because as they kept on asking me, well, what about the bombing? What about the kidnapping? What about this? I was like, well, these are my principles. Do you think anything that you're saying is against the principles that I adhere to? If so, I don't support that, right? If you're attacking people, I don't support that, But I'm looking for a global community, that a beloved community that people can live within. That's my goal. My goal is not a two-party solution or anything. My goal is to have a beloved community, however that fits, and it's up for them to have the solutions. So we came in this, and this is kind of where we're at. So that's what a lot of stuff is actually going through legal processes right now. So I'm not going to show actual pictures of the people that was in that I took. But right now, we just had 39 people were protesters were facing misdemeanor charges. All those charges have been thrown out. Where we're at right now is in this bottom screen here. There's 5 students that have been suspended. Okay, they were suspended as a result of a lot of the protesters going on, and now they're suing the chancellor. Now that's kind of where we're at. So this was the initial demands when they first brought me out. They also have a union going on. I'll talk a little bit more about this, right? But this is protests on a campus. Also, what's unique about a campus is that you have a lot of international students on campus. A lot of you all teach, as well as university. It's really an international community, and not everyone knows your issues or how you're coming into issues. Okay, so you have to be aware of that. But this was the initial demands that they were making: to divest, disclose the link, and reinvest the dollars somewhere else. They wanted amnesty. This is when we start going through some other stuff. They wanted amnesty. They wanted cops off campus. They wanted this. There's a whole sheet of new demands that came out of this as well. So we had the core demands, and then we had these other demands that was going on. In this, we had a lot of groups. If you look down here, all these groups that were sponsoring, everyone had a say, and everyone had different levels of commitments. But then also the union got involved. The reason why the union got involved was because there was a graduate student, when the call was made to suspend classes and lab work, not every researcher or a professor agreed to that. They still wanted students to go in and go do the lab work. Well, there was an altercation, and I don't want to get too deep into it, but it became verbal between a student and a professor, and there was some conflict that was there, right? Because of that, the union was brought in. But now on top of the old demands that we now have new demands about things and a new issue that's taken over everything else that was going on. So you see all this stuff. So people were out there, not just protesting, but they had encampments. Well, I'm gonna go down. And I'm gonna read this email. Yeah, let me move this real quick. This is from one of the students, international students that was there. Dear Bryan, hope you're doing well. Thanks for standing up for all of us today, Heart. I share a human development class with you. I'm a critique from year one cohort. That was the youngest cohort coming in. I was there when you was talking where I did not understand a certain context of things you shared. I didn't understand it completely because of my limited knowledge of it, civil rights, Black rights relation, being an international student. I'm sorry to be a bother, but I'd really be interested in understanding it because you share some more information about that. So when you're coming in, so remember the first two steps, okay? Let me go to. The first two steps is that gathering information, education. A lot of times when we go into these conflicts, we think people know how we're coming into it in our prior commitments already, right? So, so one of the commitments that we had as Black students that we made in education was that even if you say that you're going to not go to classes, right? The Black students still need to be allowed to go to classes, and especially if they're education majors. The reason is at UCI is in Orange County. It's a very rich county, one of the richest counties in California. There's not a lot of us there. In my department, there's only been 2 Black men in the whole department. We can't come all the way from the South and other places and not go to class. We are coming there to be, educators, teachers, researchers, other type of things, and we're needed in our own fight. So whatever other fight is going on, we can't abandon our own fight, right? This is the commitment part. That person, what can you commit to? Well, we can commit to a vote in the union. We can commit to divesting. We can commit to all these other type of things, but we can't abandon going to classes. That's one thing that we cannot do. And one day they kind of one professor wouldn't cancel classes. She was Jewish. She didn't feel the need to cancel classes. And so the students marched on her, and I was in there with the students, right? And we can go into, you can ask more questions. I'll tell you all the stuff that we used to do. We used to read a solidarity statement, and other things like that. But they really came to a head. And in there, what the international student was kind of referring to is I'm educating them using the first 2 steps, right? I'm gathering information to what they want, but I'm also educating them on the history that I bring to this, other Black students bring to this. And in this, out of this one event, we became a lot of the moderators going forward for the next 20-something days. Anytime there was, let me go back to this line here. And this picture that's on the right, we're actually around the corner there. And in that, I'm speaking to the police officers, right? Because my goal is to build a beloved community. My job is not to go after the police. It's not to do anything we are one university, right? And we're trying to hold this together so concerns can come up, truths can come out, right? But at the same time, we can't be adversarial to the point where we're not making progress. So, I'm shaking hands with the police officers, all this other stuff, kind of as moderator. 2 faculty members actually got arrested doing this. There was a third one that was in education. I told them that faculty members in education, we will resolve it within the School of Education. We came back and we did resolve it using the principles and steps, right? So my point is this. This is really my point. When you are coming into a conflict, you have to be, there's a lot of problems in the world, right? There's a lot of problems in the world. There'll be another one tomorrow, right? You need to really understand what you're committed to, how far you can commit to other people's issues and what's going on. And also the whole time while you are recruiting people, you're managing their commitments. What I was really doing, I was talking to the police officers to see how committed are they. They didn't want to hurt these students. In the class where the Jewish woman was in, and she was teaching, she didn't really have a problem with the students protesting, but she didn't want to lose her job. And also she felt like she was on the right side of the issue. And so, what I spent a lot of times doing was asking people, how committed are you to your own ideology and how far this would go, right? And what I found out was that a lot of people have a lot of rhetoric, but they're not really committed to much, right? Does that make sense? You know, they're really not, they haven't really talked. We're talking about college students, they're in their young 20s, and even got to the point where the Jewish professor was going to call the police. And I'm almost 50. She's almost my age. I was like, these are 20-year-olds. We're the adults in the room. These are kids, right? We're here in education. We're talking about, teaching children, things like that. And yet you're going to call the police on children when you have two adults in the room. Now, they're young adults. I don't want to disparage them, but I'm saying that in front of them. But we're the adults in the room who have experience, right? We should be, you and I should be able to talk this out, right? So I'm doing information gathering, education, and I'm showing her how committed I am to talking to her to resolve this. She ended up not calling the police and I'm bringing it to a close. Long story short, throughout the whole thing, no one in education was reprimanded, suspended. Faculty members met with students, gave their honest feedback of what was going on, and students did the same. At the end of the day, I'm going to be even honest. The one professor, she's been in 2 more incidents that has nothing to do with this, and they've called us in to mediate for her because they know we're nonviolent practitioners. And so there's going to be, my point is that there's going to be a lot of commitments that's going to go on in the world. But as a trainer, you have to be committed to building the beloved community. And so people are going to ask you for solutions. They're going to ask you all these other type of things. But, those solutions will arise out the process. And go back to what Chuck Alphin was saying. What we did was we really gave them a process through all this whole thing. Where the college education, we came out, I can truly say we came out a stronger community because of that. I wouldn't just say that the current dean would say that, other people would say those things. Matter of fact, as I'm job looking right now, the dean is one of my biggest advocates because of what happened here. Anytime there was going on something between students, the unions, or anything else, we can sit down, adhere to this process, and go forward. Now, I do want to note that one thing real quick, and I'll leave it alone. The students within the UCI, how we go in as practitioners may not be always what they agree to. So they changed some of the principles, right? One of the principles that they changed was the first principle, and they added realistic. Realistic nonviolence is a way of life for courageous people. Number 6, they changed universe. They said nonviolence believes that good is on the side of nonviolence believes that good is on the side of justice. Instead of self-purification, they wanted commitment. They definitely wanted to focus on that terminology. But those changes weren't violations of my principles, right? And so we could still work together. But they wanted, especially the realistic nonviolence, they really wanted to change that. So as you're going in, you have to kind of see where people are at and meet them where they're at in order to move forward. And so as I end, when you go in here, it's not just about personal commitment, just what you're willing to commit to. The whole time you're going to have to check and see what other people are willing to commit to. At which point in time, how much can they commit? If you can't go out there and be on the front line, can I get your vote if the union votes, right? Police officers, if you don't really want to charge on these students, right? Can I get you to abstain this one time and I'll speak for you while you're doing it? Right. So I'll say that, as a nonviolence practitioner, I've asked you not to charge on these students. Right. So some kind of moral code, you're not going to do it. Right. And so you're checking in with everybody's commitments all the time, reaffirming the commitments all the time until really the conflict is over. With that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up and turn it back over to you guys.
Bryan, you got about 6 more minutes if you want to add anything.
Well, it's still ongoing. And so, I'll leave it open for questions and stuff. But how it happens on a campus is you have a lot of people, and not just in a society, but a lot of different cultures, right? So you don't want to be anti-culture. You want to be pro-culture. But even in my own community, nationalism, there are nationalists in my own community. But education has always been like the exception to that. The kids still have to learn. I don't care who, what's going on, And so, one thing I would say going into a lot of the conflicts going further, I'm much clearer on the current commitments that I'm already involved in right now and how far I can go with other commitments, right? I'm against genocide, I'm against kidnapping, I'm against all those other type of things. But also, I'm also, you know, a personal friend of mine, his family just got, you know, put out of power in Gabon. You know, I mean, there's things that are going on in other parts of the world that I'm deeply committed to as well. So how, you know, so in this, even if you can't totally commit to their cause, because there's some people who have committed, hence they got suspended, right? You're always checking people's, okay, you can't commit to this, but can I get you to commit to that? And that commitment always has to be in line with the beloved community. Right? What I'm asking you to do is in line with this larger beloved community, right? You know, and so so anyway, there you go.
Thank you very much, Bryan. That was a lot of questions, a lot of information. Tell me this, is it still going on now? You said that they call you when there's labor issues or there's student issues.
The thing is going on, and I think I would say that it's going on at the chancellor's level, it's going on in different other places. But I can't say that we've moved on in the School of Education, but I can tell you that we're tackling other issues other than that. We've kind of moved on from it. I'm going to be honest with you. You know, none of our students got caught up in the misdemeanors. I was in the negotiations for the misdemeanors based upon the Cultural Black Alliance that was in there. None of the African American students. I say this, you know, but a lot of people depend on Black students to be on the forefront of everything. You know, you know, we have a reputation of being diehard fighters, but there's some other fights that we have as far as quality of life, and education is quality of life. Those students aren't involved at that level, but they, you know, there's 6 of us in the whole School of Education as Black. We have kind of risen above a lot of the union's about to strike again, right? And so they just did a vote just now, but they keep bringing us in because they know we're committed to nonviolence. And so here it is. I have 5 other students who weren't committed to nonviolence, but they were convicted. They you know, their hearts and emotions were convicted into changing the world, but didn't know that. But through this process, they have committed. Now they may move on to other types of processes later on down the road, but they can trust these students. One student is in the Student Government Association. I mean, we're at every level of this, and I always have to tell them so much, don't get so involved because you're a Black student, right? Because they'll call you for everything, that you're not paying attention, that you're not getting your degree and not going back out to what your original commitment was. What you said you was going to do was come here and get an education and go back and help Black students. That's what you said. And right now, as far as Black men in education, we're less than 1%. We're needed. There's another fight that we have going on, right? And so we are, you know, in the School of Education, we're rolling forward. Like I said, that same professor, that faculty member, she's got into it with 2 other faculty members in which I had to negotiate as a student there. I'm staff too, but as a student, you know, and so I'm not at level of faculty, right? And so they called me. So we have a process in, and if their stuff kind of falls a little bit, then they call us in they know I'm on the side of the beloved community, and I have a process that's going to help some solutions come out. And I'm not going to attack people, right? I'm going to attack what the issue is. I don't care how hard you come at me. They know that I'm committed to that.
Yeah, that's what reconciliation is reconciling so you can work together to solve bigger problems. And I heard all the time, and both of you were empowering people to decide their own problems and not waiting for you to solve it, because Dr. King empowered people to make the decisions about their own self. So thank you very much, Chuck and Bryan. Now we have time for your questions or your comments, or you want to elaborate on something that was said, or your experiences that you've had. It's wide open. Just address your question to the person, either Bryan or Chuck, and we've got about 15, 20 minutes. Any questions? Just open your mic and address it.
I have a question. Hello, everyone. So thank you so much, Chuck and Bryan, for this. This has been amazing, because oftentimes when I'm doing trainings, especially with people 35 and under, they think that nonviolence is not applicable in today's world. They think that it doesn't apply, and those methods are not going to conquer today's issues. So this is given some concrete examples in some ways that it has done so. My question is for you, Bryan, where I wanted to get a little bit more information on the realistic nonviolence, because when I'm doing, well, so at the Selma Center, we do a lot of nonviolence trainings with college students. So we have them come in for their alternative break. And principle number 4 gets people every time. They're like, hold on, I'm not accepting suffering. Hold on. No, sometimes you have to have violence. And so when you accepted the change with the addition of the word realistic, what was that conversation like, and how did that go?
So we had an issue that was happening, and protest was kind of going off, right? And so the kids are trying to, like, our students knew, like, how far do I go? And they're looking for instruction. Does that make sense, right? And so they wasn't just sitting there. And I'm older too, right? And I'm clearly more seasoned. And so I told them, this is why I told them, because I don't like to push anything down their throat. I said, go read the Pilgrims to Nonviolence, right? Go read it first, right? That's kind of where I'm operating from, and come back to me. And they came back and saw the word realistic in Pilgrims to Nonviolence. And that's what they added to that. They like, I'm not on this whole, holier than thou thing, right? But for what we're trying to do here as college students, there's no need for us to go after people, right? Does that make sense? And so so that realistic part, and then also because the truth is, right? I'm talking to other teachers, which I love talking to other teachers, is that the issues that's going on in Palestine and Israel, they really didn't know them. They really didn't have a deep history of them, right? And so they knew they didn't want bombing going on. They knew that they didn't want people getting seized and kidnapped. Like these things, that this new generation don't have the same ties to our older or yesterday's, allegiances, to be honest with you, even to the way that they approach problems. They just don't. They just know they don't want that, right? It's not really a pro-Palestine thing. It's not really pro-Israel. That they just don't want it to happen, right? That's kind of where they was coming from. And so that realistic nonviolence in this whole conflict gave them what they start saying was, Tim started saying, we don't want the bombs, we don't want the kidnaps, we don't want anything against people, so they can start sitting down and figuring out how to solve the problem. So we're against anything that's going to hurt people, right? So that realistic nonviolence was important to them, right? And so, but it came out of the literature. I made them read first, to be honest with you. I made them read first, but I had some urgency coming on because they was in the middle of this. And they got to explain to mama and daddy why they out there protesting, not going to classes and all this other stuff. And so, it helped that they could say, hey, Bryan Murray knows nonviolence. He's telling us to read this and this and this, this. And so out of that term realistic, and then good, the universe was on the side of justice. They just didn't really resonate that the universe was on the side of justice. They like God a little bit, but not everybody. We have people from Palestine in school education, and we have people from Israel, to be honest with you. We have both sides in there with us. And so, we at no point in time did we disparage any of them. And so they was looking for another term. And so, good came out of that, right? So good is on the side of justice. So we want to do good things in the world because God or whoever, what you ever believe, is on the side of good, right? And on the side of good is justice, right? And so that's what they came up with. So,
okay. Thank you very much. Another question? Thanks for the question. Excellent question.
Charles?
You had one?
Charles?
Yeah.
I'm wondering, I noticed, as we said before, that this was being recorded. I've been teaching first-year college students for 5 years now about nonviolent protest. And I'm wondering if people are willing to make at least the parts of this conversation that Chuck presented and Bryan presented available, because I think my students could benefit greatly from hearing about something very, very current that, not something that happened in the 1960s, not something that happened somewhere, but, Ferguson, the Middle East issues. So I'm just wondering if we might be able to make this conversation available to folks on the call.
First of all, Bryan and Chuck, and then Doc. Bryan, Chuck.
I'm a teacher. Everything I say is to go out, right? And
Yeah,
so
I'm available. Mine is available as well.
Doc, your thoughts?
Yes, I think this is very important because we have to deal with issues now, but some of those same issues we had to deal with much earlier. And the way we analyze those issues and the way we approach them, could it be relevant to what a lot of people are dealing with now? And I think it's important for us to be able to make those connections and see how we can apply what we have learned in the past. And what I'm understanding as a result of what you're talking about, the current things going on, I'm learning that you have really comprehend what we were trying to teach. And for you to be able to articulate that and be able to expand upon it and interpret it, that sort of thing, shows the permanency of what we're talking about, the relevancy and the necessity of what we are, taught back in the day. So it makes me feel that what we've been trying to do is coming to fruition. And when we think about it, some of you, even with gray hair, uh, uh, now looking back at what you were doing in the earlier days. And I really can appreciate that. I want to also say that many of you, of course, people who I have directly, taught and trained and shared with. And I want to quickly say that the training you got from me was immediately training that I had received. Yes. So it wasn't like a long time ago, and no. And I can really appreciate what you're doing now because you have captured those concepts and you have been able to put them into practice. And so that's what we've got to continue to do with our young people because they don't stay young long, okay? And so when they can learn from what you are teaching them, and the only thing that Charles Alphin and I have done was to help people to teach what we have learned. And as a result of those experiences, I want to say that I have really been impressed because you are the trainers, okay? And the only thing I share with others is what you have learned and what you have done with what you have learned. And so I think that's the concept. So I want to share with you, and I probably did already, but I continue to share that because that's what I'm about. And that is looking at the situation now, how do we apply the principles that we have been teaching and the principles that we have learned from the past years? So you got to look at the present situation, yes, and you've got to look at the impact, okay? And then you got to understand why did things happen the way they did? Oh my God. Mm-hmm. People became so surprised at the new president we have, who's not new. Okay. Yeah. Is this a repeat? No, this is not a repeat. This is a continuation. Yes, right. It's been that way all the time. It's just happened in different, ways. So some things have not changed. And now you have to say for everything happens for a purpose. So what is the purpose of this? And I want to share with you my thought is that we didn't learn enough the first time. So now we have a chance to learn more this time. Okay. Yeah, that's what it's all about. So we're learning more. And we think that that's going to help us apply that. Now, I want to just simply say this, and that's my conclusion. What am I doing now? I am learning what you have learned, so I know how to teach what you have now been teaching. Okay. Next thing is this. What am I going to do now? Well, I got a new project that I'm working on. Some of you know about it already. And that is something that can be applied on a global level also. And that is teaching young people how to sing freedom songs,
which Kate has helped you with.
Which Kate has helped me with in terms of the young people, okay? And helping them learn different songs in the different languages, not just their own language, but freedom songs.
Right.
Okay, like the one we want to start now is "We Shall Overcome." Yes, in Spanish, in Chinese, okay, in French, whatever. And these are students all over the world, all over the globe. Singing these songs in different languages bring them together with other people who also can sing those same songs. Okay, and it's not just the music you're learning, all right? Not just the music, but what you're learning through the verses is a way that we are united. We, the very first word that brings us together and unite us around the world. Who are the we?
That's right.
The we, okay, is all of us. We shall overcome. Okay, no matter what language you speak, whatever, etc.
That's great.
But it's the meaning of what you are saying.
I really believe in that.
Rather than just simply the words. It's the meaning. And as the young people learn these songs, the music, that brings them together on a common basis. Because when they can sing together,
that's what we do.
Okay, that's part of all we do when we live together. It's a song.
You got it.
Okay, all right. Yeah, got to go.
Pam, I heard Doc's response was, let's make it happen. So call me. And
I will.
Okay,
thank you, Charles. I just, I know this would have a big impact. I'll be teaching the same course again next fall, and I think this would be critical. And I really appreciate Chuck and Bryan, your dialogue tonight, because it really was very powerful, and it will be for students.
Yeah, and in Chuck's presentation, he didn't say it, but we saw militarism in Ferguson, that police had the tanks in Ferguson. And because of that, President Barack Obama came out that they were selling all this surplus army stuff to your police departments, and they were using them because they didn't know how to use them. You should never see a tank with people protesting, not in the United States of America. And Barack Obama stopped the sales of surplus military equipment like that to the states, to the city. but another administration after him put it back. So they're all back selling those military surplus weapons to police departments. Okay, we can give you a whole lot more information that the students will understand because that's real today. Okay, questions?
Thank you, Charles.
You're welcome. We have some questions, also questions for Bryan or Chuck. Thank you, Dr. Lafayette. Any questions, comments?
Well, also, I just want to touch on something else.
Information.
Because we're education folks, we had to go in with the commitment that we weren't going to come out with any misdemeanors or anything unless we decided to go get those, right? Or suspensions. Because if you have any kind of misdemeanors, anything like that, with teacher certifications or anything like that, you won't be allowed around children at all, right? You cannot, for your professional career, you cannot have anything, you have to have an unblemished record, right? And so we had to make it clear to them that, look, what are you committed to? What principles are you adhering to? What's guiding your thought process? Are you willing to live with these consequences, right? You traveled all this way to got $40,000 a year for this education degree, right? Are you prepared not to ever practice it again, right? And so think about how you can support this cause, whichever side you're on, but do it in a way that honors your own commitments, your own principles, and what you really stand for. Because as an education person, no one's going to allow you around kids, especially if you're African American, if you got anything on your record. That's just not going to happen, right? So is this the fight that you want to get a charge on? Because you're going to have to go, and when you go into those public schools, everybody knows that they give us the worst public schools to work in, right? And you're going to be in that, and you're going to have to, there's going to be other battles you're going to have to go fight in, right? And so is this the one that you want? If not, if you feel strongly, how can you still support the whatever side you're on, to help them get across this finish line, and remember what the goal is. Don't get sidetracked, right? And so we really had to stress that with our young folks, and a lot of young folks came. I think what really the leadership that kind of arose from us was principled leadership. They understood that we didn't tell them what to do or how to do anything like that, but our principles made our voice louder and louder and louder.
Okay, questions? Because we have some more things. Bryan brought up some more ideas in my head, but any questions that you have, comments?
I have a question for Chuck. Good evening, Chuck. It's Victoria here, calling from Connecticut. Thank you for that presentation. Chuck, I remember it well when you were all down there. And my question to you is, I learned and heard that there were young people out on the streets in Ferguson for weeks and weeks, like they held their stance. Were you working with those young people in particular that stayed the course for a long, long time?
Yes, those kids were basically kind of like the nighttime crew.
Okay.
And they were very vocal with the police. We tried to have them come back with some of the ministers there and kind of tone down the rhetoric that they were doing with the police officers. We did go in with one of our ministers to have a meeting down in another location in the city. And they were all ready to go to war. I had my dad, and I think there were some other people. Miss King was there, I believe. Was she there, CA?
Yeah.
And the thing that I remember out of the conversation was each of these gang leaders said they had hundreds of people following them, and they were armed and ready to go. I remember the one, it was a female, and she was college educated. And she also said that she had a lot of people behind her, and they were armed and ready to go. And so my dad said, okay, Dr. King was a militant too. And he said, how many of y'all ready to go? Because let's just lock and load and go. But he said, we're going to go with this and not these anymore. And man, that caught him. And that caught me too, because a lot of them were ready to engage, but not physically anymore. We had people there had been shot by the police. They were really upset about the police. So it was speaking to the leaders was the way to go that kind of calmed them down some.
And Chuck, remember the female pulled up her back and showed us 4 bullet holes that she'd been shot 4 times. But what about the nightlife? What happened the community turned on the protesters because this was a housing development, and it had 4 gangs in the housing development, and the police shut the whole housing development down. No buses, no post office, no nothing went in there. After a amount of time, the community got mad at the protesters because they couldn't get to work and back and forth to work. So we had to deal with that. So you're going to get all types of comments at that, all types of conflicts are going to come out of what people are trying to help with, but they don't know how to help. We had to have a community meeting with them in their own projects to tell them that you secure this community for 2 weeks, and these people can't take buses, they can't go to work, nothing comes in, nothing goes out. And that was a conflict between the people who live in the project and the protesters that Chuck was talking about. So,
and they were shutting down, they shut down cell phone towers, blocked cell phone. They also had tear gas going in their homes. Those people that lived in the area, tear gas was going in the houses and the vents. So now you got a whole nother problem coming up from that.
Yeah, so very moving politics. Okay, any other questions, please? And we'll elaborate on you when you talk to Bryan and Chuck, but any other questions? Because yes, question.
Yeah, I have a question for Chuck, because we had a similar situation here in St. Petersburg. How did you deal with people who were not from the area, who were not local, but wanted to come in and protest and violently protest? Were you able to identify those people?
Yep. We would identify them when we're protesting, marching. We had marshals that were designated. And then we also told everyone before we walked and did our protest that this was a nonviolent protest. If you're out here throwing things, provocateering, we charge people next to them to say something, and then say something to a marshal or say something to the police to identify them. The marshals would come to the leaders would then turn around and inform the police, and hey, they're not with us, they're out of here. So
that's very important, very, very important. Do not get tied up with the provocateurs, because the police are going to wipe out everybody. We got to make sure those provocateurs are not going to throw a tear gas or throw a bomb and hide behind somebody marching, protesting. And if it got bad enough, Chuck would stop. We stop our nonviolent march and say, these are not us. We're going home. Police, you handle that. So you have to be real organized, because that would destroy your whole movement when you get everything mixed up. The police don't know who you are. They're going to wipe out everybody. Go ahead, Chuck.
no, that was basically it. I mean, you have to set the standard in the beginning before you even go. You know, a lot of times they wanted to walk in circles, but the police was saying we couldn't walk in a certain direction. If we don't walk, you don't walk in the direction. If the police tell you not to do it, you don't do it.
And Chuck, tell them when the young people were taking selfies and dancing in the line and walking around and around, they were having fun. So Chuck had to structure all that and what nonviolence was and what the purpose was, because they were just out there taking selfies and having fun. And then the night would come over and then they start burning down buildings. So all this, you have to be on top of that. Who asked that question? Victoria? Because if not, Victoria, you'll lose it. And you have to have that, like Bryan said, these are my principles. And if you can't adhere to them, when we ask you not to join this group, do something else, and then pull your group out and go home, start it again the next day. And tell the police, this is not us. Okay, another question?
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. We're another 5 minutes. These are very important questions.
I had a question for Dr. Lafayette. I'm wondering if you have a vision for how we can help you with your project of the global nonviolence, and I'm thinking about the children and the music and the many languages, and it just it feels very worthwhile. And so I wondered, like how can we help make that happen, or is that something that you're still figuring out? And do you feel welcome, to ask us for help on that?
If I may intervene, let's put that in the parking lot, and we'll get back to you, Mary, because that's a whole different subject, and he'll have it laid out for you. And I promise you, we'll get back to that.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. Any other questions to Bryan or Chuck about the?
You got any?
Well, one thing I'll say about that topic is that I probably want more people over onto nonviolence through doing. My mentor used to say all the time, Asa Hilliard, that the best way to show children anything is to do what it is that you want them to know. And through this whole thing here, the protesting, I think I'll be doing it until I can't do it anymore, just to show people how it's done, even in conflicts that I may not have a answer for or what to do. In that, my doing brought more people onto nonviolence more than anything else. Like I can solidly say that, and which wasn't my intention. We have a whole nonviolence group at UCI now, and that was not the. It's the home. UCI is the home of Afro fusion, right? And so that's a whole like Afro realism. It's a whole. It had a whole other thing, but now nonviolence. There's a whole set because most people can kind of see. I'd rather do that than other things, you know. But it was in my doing that actually recruited them.
Bryan makes a good point. Dr. King not only talked and could speak well, he took off his suit and tie and put on his bib overalls and led the people. Yeah. That's where you get the people's cooperation. You can't send the people, you got to lead the people. You got to believe in what they believe in. And Chuck was out there and Bryan forefront, you know, doing things that had to be done, but make sure you have to be on the streets. You can't be in no suite.
I agree wholeheartedly, Bryan. I've gotten more people to come on that side by being out there up front in the thick of it than anything.
Because people want things to be different. They get out there, but then they're like, I don't know what to do, right? And they're really looking for some structure, right? They really are. Like they're almost begging for it once they get out there. You know, it's kind of like leaping, and then they're out there and like, hey, wait a minute, I don't have a parachute, you know? And then you come in with this freight train of nonviolence, they almost thank you for it, you know?
Okay, next question. We got about 1 minute. So much to say. So much to say. Anybody ever comment? These things are real and they happen, they're dynamic, and you can't have a book and read it 1, 2, 3. It's strategic, knowing, and just doing what principles like Bryan said, because every riot, I've been in riots in California and the Copper City here, everyone is different. There's no template you put on top of it and say this happened. Okay, anybody else? Well, it's 7:27. I always like to end on time. It's really, this has really been great. We started. We hope we whet your appetite so you can begin to call Chuck or email Chuck and Bryan. You have their email and ask them. You know, if you had a question that you didn't get answered, because this is how we educate, and this makes it relevant. What we're doing now is making it relevant to 2024, because we can't keep talking about 1960. You know, we're celebrating the 60th anniversary of Selma. Most of these kids weren't even born in 60 years ago. This is a whole new generation. So we've got to change this. I think Dr. Lafayette, we were talking about something. I'm not sure where I had some in the conversation. We need to change all this material and update it to 2024 to the generation we're talking to, because we're not going to get them by talking about Dr. King, Walter Cross, and Montgomery. About 5 minutes, they're ready to say, well, how does that apply with issues I'm serving at the day? So you got to update, not change the content, but just update the vocabulary and the material, everything to this. And this is helpful, and I hope it's stimulating you all to begin to think like this. And Pam, in summary, we will call me and we'll get this together for you. Chuck and Bryan, I can't thank you enough. I called them and said, I knew Bryan.
Thank you.
That's beautiful. Beautiful.
Did a great job.
You know, and
Really great.
Chuck had been involved with Ferguson, was updated 10 years ago.
Enjoyed it so much.
And Chuck didn't talk about the political situation that we did. We changed the city council. We had a political election. We had a political election. I think Chuck did mention that the prosecutor that didn't prosecute police officers had been there 27 years because his father had been killed in the projects in St. Louis, where his dog kept us from getting to his body. Died. So he was pro-police and wasn't prosecuting for the last 27 years. We finally got him out of there through the political system. So it's a comprehensive approach, like Chuck said and Bryan, that you have to do that. You have to do all of that to get to what's driving that behavior, not the police chief or the police behavior, but that whole system. It was systemic in that whole Ferguson system. Chuck and Bryan, the last words. Chuck, you're first, and then Bryan, you're going to wrap it up. Chuck?
I just want to, thank you guys for the opportunity. to let me share. And it brought up a lot of things when I did this. So a lot of things that I had forgot. So now I have something that I can actually say was here. And, like CA and Doc always say, trust the process. I mean, I can't do anything else but trust the process.
Thank you very much, Bryan.
I became a teacher to talk to other teachers. I always say that all the time. And so it's always the best crowd, right? The best peer group to ever have is the other teachers. So I appreciate just having a conversation with you all. And UC did end up divesting from Israeli backed things, right? And so I don't want to put a position out there, but UC did make a firm stand on that. We was invited up to when the chancellor announced it in Sacramento as well.
Now, I know Bryan, the same thing happened with South Africa apartheid when the students told those universities to divest from South Africa. Yep, and they put it on the front. They said, anybody paying going to South Africa, investing, we're going to put you on the New York Times. And it scared the heck out of those colleges, and they divested. Yeah, but in the education community, I think the Jewish folks, students that was there, and as well as the Palestinian students, all felt like they were all part of that. We, in the beloved community, we had some issues, right? We had some differences, and I think that's what ultimately how we left it. Well, on behalf of Kate, how you doing?
Kate.
Doing great. I am so happy to be here tonight and to learn all of these different issues that I must be a part of. And Bernard is just really, really happy to do what he's doing with you. I am so proud of all of these people who are doing these things. This is important, isn't it, Bernard?
Absolutely.
So important. Thank you for asking.
Thank you for sharing your
Love you, Kate.
Years and Mary, well, we'll get back to you with Dr. Lafayette. But I would take the time now to wish all of you very happy holidays. Enjoy your family. Enjoy the quiet time. Hopelessness is not an option. Hopelessness is not. So we can be thankful for what we've done and get outside of all this noise and just get into a quiet place. Sometimes just turn that television off because it's a television. All it does is television. Turn it off and get you a nice book or take a walk because it's just too much noise out there, and it's just you'll have some problems, some personal problems. But God bless you. I love you, and we'll look forward in January that we'll say come again and enjoy your holidays. And like the young folks say, Bryan, just chill.
Thank you so much. This is great.
God bless you.
Thank you.
And we'll pray for you in our prayers.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Go Chiefs. Go Chiefs.
Go Bucks.